No one in the quiet rural region of Ethiopia expected the earth beneath their feet to tear open without warning. It was a peaceful morning, the kind where farmers prepared their tools and families gathered for breakfast. Nothing seemed unusual. But deep underground, something ancient, something powerful, had already awakened. When the ground suddenly split apart, creating a massive crack stretching farther than the eye could see, the people living nearby froze in fear. News traveled fast. Within hours, scientists from across the country rushed toward the site, unsure of what they were about to face. They had studied earthquakes, volcanic activity, and shifting plates, but none of them were prepared for the sight waiting for them. The moment they arrived, shock spread across their faces. This wasn't a normal crack in the earth. The ground had separated cleanly, almost like a giant invisible blade had sliced the continent open. Dust still hovered in the air, the earth still trembling under their feet. The scientists felt something deeper than fear. It was the sense that the world they knew had changed in an instant. This wasn't just another geological event. It was a message from the planet itself. As they approached the edge of the enormous rift, they noticed something even more surprising. The crack was expanding. Very slowly, almost gently, but undeniably moving. They could hear the faint grinding of rock against rock, the deep rumbling of the planet shifting. One of the senior geologists whispered that it looked like the beginning of a continental split. Some of the younger researchers exchanged nervous glances. Continental splits take millions of years. They weren't supposed to begin with such sudden force. But the evidence was right there before them, stretching across the landscape like a wound. What made the situation even stranger was the absence of a major earthquake beforehand. Usually such a dramatic tear would be the result of violent, shaking, powerful movements beneath the Earth's crust. But no one in the area had felt anything strong enough to cause this. The villagers reported hearing a loud cracking noise, like thunder under the ground, but no destructive quake. Scientists couldn't understand how such a massive geological change had occurred so quietly. The team set up equipment near the rift. Seismographs, sensors, drones, and imaging tools all began collecting data. They were working fast, almost frantically, because something told them time was limited. The ground felt unstable. Every minute, tiny pieces of rock fell into the abyss. Below, disappearing into a darkness no one dared to approach too closely. As drones descended into the rift to capture footage, the live feed appeared on their monitors. And the moment the scientists saw what was inside, their panic doubled. Layers of rock that should have taken millions of years to form were exposed clearly, as if nature had laid out an open book. But among the layers there were unusual formations. Strange mineral structures, patterns never seen in the region before, and deep tunnels that didn't match any known geological process. The deeper the drones went, the stranger the images became. Some parts of the rift glowed faintly, illuminated by minerals that reacted to the camera lights. Something ancient was hidden beneath the surface, something untouched, unstudied, and possibly extremely important. The lead scientist asked the drone operator to hover near a particularly bright section. The glow was coming from a cluster of minerals unlike anything they had documented in Ethiopia's geological records. The formation looked like crystal veins running through the rock, shimmering like molten metal. If the composition was what? They suspected it could change not just the scientific understanding of Africa's geological history, but also the future of the entire continent. At the same time, hundreds of villagers gathered at a safe distance, watching silently. Some whispered old local legends about the earth opening to reveal secrets from the beginnings of time. Others worried that this was a warning from nature, a sign of something dangerous approaching. The air was filled with tension, curiosity, and fear. The scientists knew they had to calm the people, but how could they when they themselves didn't know what was truly happening? As teams worked around the clock, one question grew louder in their minds. Was this the birth of a new ocean? Africa has long been sitting on a major geological boundary. Some researchers had predicted that one day the continent would split, forming a brand new sea between East Africa and the rest of the continent. But no one imagined they would witness the beginning of that process in their lifetime. And now, standing at the edge of a growing rift, it felt like history unfolding right beneath their feet. The scientists prepared a deeper investigation. More drones, more sensors, more samples. Everyone felt the pressure building. They weren't just studying a natural event. They were recording the first chapter of something that would eventually reshape Africa forever. And then, just when they thought they had seen the strangest parts of the rift, one of the drones detected movement in a deeper chamber. Not shaking or cracking movement, the drone's camera zoomed in. The scientists leaned closer to the monitor, hearts pounding, breath caught in their throats. What they saw made several of them step back in shock. It wasn't animals. It wasn't water. It was something else, something they had never imagined would be hiding beneath Ethiopia's ancient land, something that would rewrite not only geological history, but human history too, and that's where everything in their mission changed. The moment the drone detected movement, the entire team froze. No one spoke, no one moved. The only sound was the soft humming of the screens as the camera zoomed in deeper into the rift. The chamber revealed by the drone was unlike anything they had expected. It wasn't a natural cave, and it wasn't shaped like a normal geological pocket. The walls were smooth, almost carved, as if someone or something had shaped them long before history had ever been written. And in the center of that chamber, surrounded by glimmering mineral walls, something shifted again. The drone's light caught it for only a second, but that second was enough. It looked like a structure. Not metal, not stone, but something in between. The scientists stared in disbelief. Structures don't appear inside untouched geological rifts. Nothing man-made should have been there, and certainly not something this ancient. One of the geologists took a deep breath and said that if what they were seeing was real, it meant Ethiopia had just revealed one of the oldest mysteries on Earth. The drone adjusted its angle and went deeper. The chamber became clearer. An enormous platform lay at the center, partly buried by rock. The edges were too perfect, too straight, too symmetrical to be natural. Dust and stone covered much of it, but from what the drone could see, the structure had markings carved along its sides. The scientists zoomed in, hoping to find answers, but the markings weren't like any known script. They weren't letters. They weren't symbols. They looked more like patterns, incredibly precise lines intersecting in ways that seemed impossible for ancient civilizations. The lead archaeologist wasn't supposed to be part of this expedition, yet now she found herself standing shoulder to shoulder with geologists and volcanologists, staring at something that might belong to a forgotten chapter of Africa's history. She whispered that if this structure was truly artificial, then humanity had underestimated how far back African civilizations went. Long before pyramids, long before recorded history, something extraordinary might have existed beneath this land. The drone moved closer, and suddenly, dust fell from above. The chamber shook slightly. Several scientists shouted for the operator to pull the drone back. Everyone braced themselves, worried that the rift might collapse further. But the shaking stopped after a few seconds. Silence remained, heavy and unbroken. The drone hovered again, its camera lights cutting into the ancient darkness. Then something even more shocking appeared. On one side of the chamber, hidden behind fallen rocks, a curved object protruded from the wall. It looked like part of a sphere, smooth and metallic, reflecting the drone's lights with a dim silver glow. No one could comprehend how anything metallic could have survived so deep underground for so long. And how had it gotten there in the first place? There were no historical records of technology advanced enough to create such a structure in ancient Ethiopia. The lead scientist whispered to the group that this could be the discovery that rewrites Africa's origin story. Something underground, something incredibly old, something intentionally placed or built long before modern understanding of human civilization. Yet as exciting as it was, fear began to spread through the team. If the ground continued to open, whatever lay beneath could be exposed to the world unprepared. What would that mean? And what if the geological activity was connected to the hidden structure? Could it be influencing the rift? The sun was beginning to set, and the sky turned orange, casting long shadows across the land. Local villagers were still gathered in the distance, watching with worry. Rumors had already started spreading. Some said the ground was opening because the earth was angry. Others believed ancient spirits were rising. Many were convinced something sacred had been disturbed. The scientists knew they had to address the public soon, but without answers they could only prepare for more questions. That night, the team set up floodlights around the rift and continued working. New sensors were placed near the edges to detect underground pressure. Additional drones were charged and prepared for deeper exploration. The tension was thick, and every member of the crew felt the weight of history pressing on their shoulders. They were facing something that even textbooks couldn't prepare them for. Around midnight, as temperatures dropped and the world grew quiet, one of the seismographs alerted the team. The ground beneath the chamber had begun vibrating again, but not in the usual chaotic pattern of earthquakes. This vibration had rhythm. It pulsed evenly, like a heartbeat deep inside the earth. The readings repeated themselves every few seconds. Steady and strangely calm, the scientists stared at the graphs in confusion. No natural formation produced signals like this. Something underground was creating a consistent pulse. It was impossible. But the evidence was right there. They rushed to send another drone down, hoping to see what was happening. As the drone descended, its lights reflected off the metallic sphere again. This time, the glow seemed stronger, as if the object was responding to the vibrations. The drone moved closer, and then something happened that made the entire team gasp. The curved metallic shell began shifting. Dust fell as the surface revealed faint lines glowing softly under the drone's lights. The scientists leaned toward the monitor, unable to believe what they were witnessing. These lines formed patterns similar to the carvings on the central platform. The structure wasn't just old, it was active. One of the researchers asked if it could be some kind of ancient machine, but no one dared to say the words out loud. The idea sounded impossible, yet the evidence kept building. Something long buried was waking up, then without warning the drone feed flickered. Static overtook the screen, the lights dimmed. The camera froze, and in a final flash the feed went completely dark. The drone was gone. Everyone stared at the black screen, their hearts pounding. The last image burned into their minds. The structure was glowing, alive in a way that no one understood. The ground beneath them rumbled again. This was only the beginning. The next morning, the entire research team gathered at the crack of dawn. The air above the rift was strangely still, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Alem stood at the edge of the widening crack, staring down into the shadows below. She felt something whisper beneath her feet, a low hum rising like a pulse. It wasn't sound, it was vibration, deep and ancient. She stepped back quickly, her heart pounding. She kept telling herself it was only the earth shifting. But something inside her knew it was more than that. The equipment was activated again, and the readings immediately spiked. The numbers climbed so fast the machines began to click sharply, warning the scientists that whatever was happening underground was accelerating. Dr. Nevin shouted for everyone to maintain safe distance, but no one could look away from the anomaly unfolding right in front of them. The ground was trembling again, gently at first, but growing stronger with each passing second. Dust lifted from the earth as if the soil itself was breathing. Then, without warning, a warm gust of air burst upward from the crack. Alem jumped back. It was like someone had opened a giant oven door beneath the ground. But the most shocking part wasn't the heat, it was the smell. Not burning, not sulfur, not smoke. It smelled like rain on fresh soil, like life. The scientists exchanged confused glances. Dr. Salim stepped closer and whispered, almost to himself, that no volcanic chamber in the region should produce air like that. This wasn't magma. This wasn't fire. This was something entirely different. The cameras they lowered into the crack began transmitting. At first, the screen showed only darkness. Then slowly a faint red glow appeared. But it wasn't lava. It was something glowing faintly like embers, arranged in strange lines and shapes. Dr. Navin froze. Those weren't natural formations. They looked like markings, symbols, patterns carved into stone deep underground where no human hands had ever reached. Alem felt chills run through her body. She kept staring at the screen, her mind racing. What kind of markings could exist so deep beneath ancient volcanic rock? Who could have carved them? Were they natural geological lines or something older than history itself? The idea seemed impossible. But impossibility didn't stop the ground from shifting beneath them again. The tremor that followed was different. This one felt timed, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Alem grabbed onto a nearby boulder for balance, and she could feel the thump steady, powerful, echoing up through the layers of earth. She looked up at Dr. Navin, expecting him to dismiss it, but the expression on his face told her he felt it too. The heartbeat-like vibrations grew stronger. The team scrambled to secure the equipment. Something was moving beneath them. Alem watched the camera feed closely, her breath catching. The glowing symbols on the stone started to shift in the image. At first, she thought it was the camera shaking. But no, the symbols were actually moving, rearranging, realigning themselves into new patterns, as if forming a message. One of the interns screamed when the symbols suddenly formed a perfect circle. Inside the circle, a bright point of red light pulsed once, twice, a third time. Then the light blinked out completely. The feed went dark. The silence that followed was heavier than anything they had felt before. Alem could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. No one spoke. The wind itself seemed to refuse to blow, and then another vibration. But this time, it didn't shake the ground. This time, it hummed through the air like a deep note from an invisible instrument. Alem grabbed her chest instinctively as the sound passed through her. It wasn't dangerous, but it was powerful. So powerful that tears formed in her eyes without her understanding why. Dr. Salim checked the readings again and stumbled back. The energy signature had tripled. Whatever was inside the earth wasn't slowing down. It was waking up. Alem found herself whispering a prayer under her breath. She had grown up hearing stories about the living earth, about ancient forces resting beneath Ethiopia, about guardians and forgotten legacies. Myths, she always thought. But standing here now, staring at a trembling land and moving symbols underground, she wasn't so sure anymore. A sharp alarm jolted everyone. The fissure had expanded again almost 2 meters in just minutes. The soil crumbled away in chunks, and a deep groaning sound echoed up from below. The team scrambled back just as the edge collapsed inward, revealing an opening large enough to swallow a car. Alem peered into the darkness. She couldn't see anything, but she felt it. Something down there was stirring, rising, preparing. Dr. Navin ordered everyone to retreat to the vehicles until the tremors stopped, but Alem couldn't move. She kept staring into the opening, her heart thudding with fear and something else, something like recognition. As if whatever waited below had been waiting specifically for humans to find it again. The others were climbing into the jeeps when Alem suddenly felt the ground beneath her foot dip slightly. Not a full tremor. Just a single gentle drop, almost like a step being taken below her. She turned back and stared into the crack one more time. And in that moment she saw a brief flash of light. Not red this time, blue. A soft, glowing blue light blinking once deep beneath the surface. Her breath caught in her throat. Blue light didn't belong inside volcanic rock. It didn't belong anywhere underground. It belonged to something else. Entirely something alive, something ancient, something intelligent. She stumbled back, finally rushing toward the vehicles. As she reached them, the ground gave one final heavy thud, like a massive heartbeat rising from the earth. The team stared at each other in stunned silence. Something was waking up beneath Ethiopia. Something older than the Rift Valley, older than the continent itself. And now that it had started, there was no stopping it. They all knew, without speaking, that whatever they discovered next could change Africa forever. The drive back to the temporary base was silent. No one had the courage to break the tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. Alem kept staring back at the distant crack, even though it was now far behind them. She had seen strange things in her life, but nothing that felt like this. Nothing that felt alive. She could still feel the faint echo of that last pulse in her chest, as if the earth had left a mark inside her. When they reached the tents, the team immediately began transferring the footage and reviewing every second of the camera feed, but the moment they reached the part where the glowing symbols rearranged themselves into a perfect circle, everyone froze again. Seeing it live had been shocking. Seeing it now, slowed down frame by frame, made it impossible to pretend it was a natural phenomenon. One researcher whispered that it almost looked like language. Another said it resembled ancient African geometric inscriptions that predated known civilizations. Alem didn't say anything, but deep inside she felt something strange, like she had seen similar shapes once in her childhood, carved on an old stone near her grandmother's village. She tried to shake off the feeling. It didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. Dr. Navin suggested sending the footage to additional experts. But before anyone could respond, the ground shook again, more violently this time. The tents rattled. Metal equipment clattered to the floor. A sharp rumbling sound grew louder and louder, like something enormous was tearing its way upward through layers of rock. Alem stumbled outside. Dust clouds rose from the distant fissure, but this time it wasn't just shaking, it was glowing. A faint blue light shimmered along the edges of the crack, spreading like veins of energy through the ground. People from nearby villages had gathered outside their homes, staring at the strange glow lighting up the earth beneath their feet. Even the animals were uneasy. Goats bleated nervously. Birds flew in chaotic patterns. Dr. Salim rushed toward the vehicles, ordering everyone to prepare for evacuation, but Alem didn't move. She felt rooted to the ground, drawn toward the glowing fissure. Something deep inside her whispered that they couldn't just run. They needed to understand what was happening. They needed to see it with their own eyes. The team drove back toward the crack, even though every instinct told them to stay far away. But curiosity and fear pushed them forward. As they neared the fissure again, the glow grew brighter. The air buzzed. The soil vibrated. Alem could barely breathe from the intensity. When they stepped out of the vehicles, they saw it. A massive slab of stone had risen from the depths, suspended just above the opening by some unseen force. It was covered in symbols, those same glowing red patterns, but now mixed with bright blue lines that moved like flowing water across the surface. It looked as if the stone itself was alive, awakening after thousands of years. Alem stepped closer, unable to stop herself. Her pulse matched the rhythmic thudding coming from beneath the slab. She felt something calling, something ancient and powerful that reached beyond language and thought. Dr. Navin shouted at her to stay back, but she didn't listen. She walked until the blue glow reflected in her eyes. The slab emitted a low and the glowing symbol shifted again, this time forming a shape Alem instantly recognized. A map of the African continent. The Rift Valley was highlighted in bright blue. Then the glowing lines stretched beyond Ethiopia, extending toward Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, the Congo Basin, and all the way to the Atlantic coast. Dr. Salim gasped. Whatever was awakening beneath the earth wasn't limited to Ethiopia. It was connected to the entire continent. The symbols morphed again, forming lines that resembled pathways, underground routes, channels, or something deeper that linked ancient geological structures across Africa. What is it showing us? One researcher whispered. Alem stared, and before she could think, the words slipped from her mouth. It's showing us what's coming. The moment she spoke, the stone pulsed brightly, as if responding to her voice. The ground shook again, and a gust of warm air rose from the fissure, swirling around the team. The stone slab slowly tilted, revealing a hollow beneath it, a chamber, glowing blue like the inside of a star. They could see movement inside. Not creatures, not machines' energy, flowing like liquid light. Alem felt her knees weaken. This wasn't a natural discovery. This was something planted. Something designed. Something left behind by forces unknown, perhaps predating human history. A hidden system buried deep beneath Africa, waiting for a moment when the continent would be ready. Another pulse shook the ground, stronger than ever before. Dust lifted into the air. Car alarms began to blare in the distance. Alem stumbled backward. She knew what the stone was revealing wasn't just information, it was a warning. The energy rising beneath the continent could reshape land, oceans, and climate. It could tear apart old structures and form new ones. And once awakened, there was no turning back. The slab began to sink slowly into the crack again, descending with the glowing symbols and the map. Alem reached out instinctively as if trying to hold on to the last moment before everything changed. But the stone disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind only the fading blue light and the silence of a land that had just revealed one of the greatest secrets on Earth. The team stood there, stunned, unable to speak. The wind picked up again, blowing dust across the valley. Alem closed her eyes, feeling the final tremor fade beneath her. She understood now. Africa wasn't breaking apart. Africa was transforming. The ground wasn't dying, it was awakening, and what they had witnessed was not an ending. It was the beginning of something that would rewrite the future of the entire continent. She opened her eyes and looked at the horizon, knowing that what they discovered would soon be known to the world. But deep inside, she also knew this, whatever was coming next. Humanity wasn't ready,